Welcome to the On the Spot podcast, where we talk to people from all walks of life and recovery, brought to you by your favorite sober lounge, which I think is probably the only sober lounge. I mean, I didn't really do like research or anything, but it's called The Spot, and it's on 43rd and Northern in Phoenix, Arizona, where they host several meetings every day, cultivate a positive environment of fellowship and recovery that supports sponsorship in the 12 steps. Also, they're a nonprofit that does a lot of good for people inside and outside of the rooms. Today, I get to talk to a lady who has held almost every service position there is, sponsors an insane amount of women, who has gone through all levels of loss and grief and recovery, and whose main focus is family and service. This is Rica. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited for sure.
Excellent. How are you doing today?
Good. Yeah, it's been a great day.
So I kind of want to touch real quick before we get into your story on all the positions you've held in recovery real quick. Now, do
Yeah,
you feel the traditions as it pertains to service work and the relationships you've had to navigate being on so many committees has helped you navigate the relationships like within your own family?
absolutely. I believe that service crosses over in my family interactions, my community interactions, my work interactions, right? And the traditions, I've had to learn some of them the hard way, some of them the easier way, and it absolutely all applies to being of service. For sure. Some of the different service commitments that I've had, my very first service commitment, let me tell you about this. Commitment I ever got was on H&I. And it wasn't that I wanted to join a committee. I was in sober living and I was on restriction because I had back rent that I needed to pay because I went in on a promise to pay. Every once a month, I noticed the house moms of the home going out and they would come back with food. And I like to eat. And so I remember asking them, like, hey, where do you go? And they were like, we go to this restaurant and we go to this H&I meeting for CMA. And I said, well, can I go? I want to join H&I. And really, I just wanted to go out to dinner and stay out past curfew. And she said, yeah, you can come with us next month. And so I went with them the next month. We went to Jerry's restaurant. I got to order some food. And I also got my very first service commitment, which was the tabling chair for H&I. Since then, I've held many different positions on H&I. I'm still holding a position on H&I. I've done, I did the tabling chair, chips and lit for a long time, for like 2 or 3 years. I have been co-chair, chair, and I just recently was chair of H&I Day, which was held just a few weeks ago. But other than that, I mean, I hold service commitments at a home group level. Many different commitments there again, like all sorts of positions, treasurer, chair, co-chair, t-shirt person, chair of the Valentine's Day dance, things like that. Because my home group holds a CMA dance each year. Um, I've held positions at a district level, again, as the H&I chair and also as the co-chair and the chair of district. I have held positions at an area level, again, as co-chair, chair. Now I am your current senior delegate for CMA area. I also sit on the board. I sit on the district board for CMA as well. And because I sit in these different areas and I'm the delegate, I also am serving now at a GSC, general service level. I've been doing that for a few years. I answer the hotline. For the last few years, I've answered the hotline for the General Service Conference or World Services, also has been known to be called that before. And I've been answering phones for them on the hotline for the last few years, but now I'm serving on their public information and outreach as well.
That is incredible. And and I think it's super important to let anyone out there know if you're interested in getting into service, you can get involved in it on there's different levels available. You don't have to be on a world committee. You don't have to do
Yes.
that kind of stuff if you don't think you can handle it, you can take like a U-sized piece of the service pie, as it were, and you can get involved on any level you'd like to, but it's important to get involved because I think, like you said, navigating the relationships within that, the and applying the traditions, I think absolutely has helped me with like interpersonal relationships that I've had with people inside and outside of the rooms. How to deal with an annoying boss or how to deal with a coworker I don't necessarily like. Have you found it to be useful in other areas too, as far as like the traditions and how you've had to deal with the different personalities that you're probably running into on a daily basis?
All the time, absolutely. I have to remember that it's, often enough when I find something wrong with somebody, I have to look at myself and where is that coming from? Because 9 times out of 10, it's something that I don't like about myself, right? I have to show grace where grace is deserved. In general, I'm just kind of a happy person in life since I've been sober, but utilizing those principles and the traditions and even the concepts, right, has allowed me to grow within my interpersonal relationships, my work relationships, my of course obviously program relationships, and it's hard. Sometimes that's hard, you guys. Like it's a real thing. I'm still a very real person, very fallible, very full of character defects. This is not something that is like just comes with, it just doesn't. It comes with practice, comes with patience, time, grace, comes with failure as well as success. And I try to focus more on the success part, right? Because if not, my brain will pick itself apart, of everything I do wrong, I can't do, I didn't do well. But the traditions and the concepts and the principles behind those tell us to have grace, confidence, to be relaxed, to have patience with yourself. I mean, all of those things come about that. There, it doesn't say this is what you do and you do it perfect, or we're not going to like you. No, it doesn't say that. That's what my brain tells me. But no, absolutely not.
Exactly. And my sponsor told me, like, even when dealing with people that aren't in recovery, I have to remember that I'm the one in recovery. Like, I can't afford to be an asshole. Like, I don't get that luxury today, because if I'm going to be in recovery and I'm representing, you know, the rooms of recovery as a whole they may not know somebody else that's in recovery. And if I'm like, oh, I'm in recovery, and I go out and I act like a piece of shit to people, you know what I'm saying? It gives them the wrong idea. I have to practice these principles in all of my affairs. And that's not just with people in the rooms, it's with, people outside of the rooms too. And it can be a little bit more difficult dealing with people who aren't in recovery sometimes because they don't seem to have the same attitude of always bettering themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't necessarily pay attention to their character defects as much, or maybe it's just uh or maybe it's just that I'm noticing a lot more stuff in them that I don't like about myself. I'm not sure.
I think it's a little bit of both for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so all right, yeah, let's get into your story real quick. I know you had mentioned to me that family is a big part of your recovery, right? You're a very family oriented person, which is awesome. And I know for a lot of people that are new to recovery that are trying to get their families back in their lives, that may seem like a distant dream to them. And I know that it doesn't happen overnight. That's something that those relationships take time to work on. Any advice for people new to recovery that are trying to get back into the good graces of their family?
Man, just take one step in front of the other and give that shit to God. Give it all to God because you have zero control over it, right? Man, when I first got sober, my family had completely written me off. I had very little contact with my daughter at the time, who was a teenager, though her father never held her from me. At the same time, she was tired of my BS. She was tired of me not showing up, those empty promises. It wasn't that she was done with me. She just had created a life outside of me that was fulfilling what she needed. Remember, so just for newcomers, don't push it. Give it to God, do the next right thing, and listen to what God's trying to tell you. Listen to that God conscience, right? Which a God conscience to me is listening to my intuition, but I no longer call it intuition. It is my God conscience. It's what God is telling me to do. When my head and my heart align, that is what tells me, okay, I'm on the right path. And when I say that, so I remember in early recovery, I just moved back with my mom, and I was living in where I live now in Levine, and I had called my daughter. Her dad and I had 50-50 custody. And I called my daughter and I told her, "Hey, so check it out. Next week you're going to come to my house and stay with me for a week." And she was very blunt with me and she was like, "I love you so much, but I don't want to do that." If you want me to come visit you a couple days a week, I'm comfortable with that, but I don't want to live with you. Like, I have a life over here with my dad, and it's safe and it's secure and it's consistent, and you're not those things. And I remember I was walking from the bus that night when I had this conversation, and I was just crying, and I was talking to God, and I was like, well, what is the point of me even staying sober? Like, I was ready to give it all up. I was going to go out and I was going to get loaded because what's the point of staying sober if she doesn't want me to be a part of her life? And I just remember like crying out loudly, and I'm walking down the street and I cried out loudly, like, God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And clear as day, I heard God say, get involved in service. And so I did. Um, by that point, I had that little service commitment, but I just started to show up at committee meetings and I started to volunteer. You need me to take out trash? I'll take out trash. You need me to stand at the door and greet? I'll stand at the door and greet. Whatever you need me to do is what I'm going to do. And, so getting, just like I said, and that's just doing the next right thing that was in front of me. Eventually, my daughter came home. Eventually, I actually by the time she was about a year later, I had full custody of her, and she was living with me full time. But if I would have given up that night and thrown it all away, I have no idea where our lives would be today, for sure.
That is amazing, and, and it's funny, and it's something that I hear consistently and, like, didn't believe at first or didn't understand how it worked, right? But sometimes when I don't have an answer or a solution to something, the solution is just to get more involved in the program and do more things. And I don't know how it works, but everybody that I've talked to says it works, and it does work from firsthand experience. And the only way I can explain it is because it got me out of myself, and there's really no solution in self, right? So I guess what it did was it allowed me to remove myself from the situation and allow God to come in and just kind of work on the stuff where I was too hands on in my own life?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, all right, yeah, let's get into your story. Let's talk about, what it was like, what happened, and where you're at now.
So, I've been in and out of the rooms, um, for 31 plus years. I got sober the first time when I was 16. I was a young person in recovery. By the time I was 16, I was a full on addict. Um, but I hadn't drank a lot, I'm not gonna lie. And I stayed in the rooms till I was about 20. I met some amazing people that saved my life when I came back to the rooms because they were still here. So I have friends that have 31 plus years of recovery that I've known for 31 years because of the rooms. And around the age of 20, I decided that I was a drug addict, but I wasn't an alcoholic, and I needed to go and explore that some. And I left the rooms, and I lived this like really kind of perfect life for a long time, or for a little while, I should say. And I got married to my first husband, and I had a baby, and life was good. But we all know that no matter what, at that point in my life, if I'm a drug addict or an alcoholic, that's what I am, right? So at this point in my life, I don't realize, but my disease steps back in, and now I'm just an untreated drug addict, alcohol. And throughout my years, I never really made it back in the rooms after that until I got sober this time. But I made it a lot of in and out of detox centers, and jumped in and out of detox centers, pulled a lot of geographicals because I wasn't the problem. The state of Arizona was the problem. And by the time I was done, I was just living like such a recluse. I was so lonely. I was so disgusted with myself. I did not want to be a drug addict. I didn't want to be a drug addict. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I didn't want to wake up every morning and depend on something to get me through the next few moments of my day. I didn't want to make the decisions that I had to make um, to get the money that I needed to continue to stay loaded. So yeah, you know, God has a mysterious way of making things happen. And the craziest thing is that this girl, I watched her get sober, this girl that I knew, and I didn't really like this girl and she didn't really like me. But she got sober. And when she got sober, um, I was really jealous that she got to go to rehab. I was really jealous that there were people in her life that were supporting her, and she got to go to rehab. And so, but it placed a thought in my brain, right? Like it touched my heart in some way, somehow, because I started to almost obsess over it. Like, why did she get to go to rehab? They love her so much more than me. she's so much better than me. And so, but it started to make me think that if she could get sober, I could get sober. If she could do it, I could do it. And so the day came and I reached out to that girl who didn't much like me and I didn't much like her. And I said, "Hey, would you be willing to talk to me?" And for the first time in a really long time, I sat across the table of another woman and I got really honest. And I told her that I was a drug addict and an alcoholic and I needed help and I didn't know how to do that. And she said she would help me. And that girl was my ex-husband's new girlfriend. And her and him took me into their home for the first 24 days of recovery and allowed me to get sober in their home until I went to treatment. And I'm so forever grateful for them because I just don't know where my life would be today. And that had to have been for her to just say, "Yeah, I'll help you. And not only will I help you, I'll let you live with me. I'll take you to every meeting. I'll take you to every counseling, everything that you need to do to get into treatment. I'll feed you. I'll give you cigarettes. Like everything. They did everything for me." And so I'm super grateful. But that's how I got back into the rooms. But like I said, I've been fighting this disease for so many years. I'm super grateful that I was able to get sober for sure.
And, and hearing stuff like that is incredible because, I've heard about people getting sober living at trap houses. I've heard people get sober while being homeless and not having a place to go. So I can only imagine how hard it must have been to get sober at your ex-husband's house with his new girlfriend. It's kind of like your mentor. You know what I'm saying? There had to be a little bit of resentment there, a little bit,
Mhm.
and like just a little bit of jealousy. I could only
For
imagine the
sure.
emotions that you were, going through. And it's crazy because, this thing pulls us to a point where none of that stuff matters. Like, as shitty of a situation that was, we're willing to deal with it because, we just don't want to die. So when you found the rooms of recovery this time, walk me through what it was like. Cause I can only imagine, relapse is a part of my story too. How were you able this time to prevent yourself from going back out? What's different for you this time?
And I made a decision. I just made a decision. I made a decision this time. I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I knew there had to be a better way of life, and it wasn't easy. I lived with the ex and his girlfriend at the house, and I got to be around my daughter during that time, which was a blessing. But like I said, she had created this other life for herself, and then I made the decision per suggestion. Heavy suggestion from my sponsor to go ahead and go to treatment. And in treatment, I was able to learn about my disease and my relapses and what that looks like, right? And then my sponsor again suggested I go to sober living, and I was bougie and I was a snob, and I was like, "Ooh, that's gross. I don't want to go to sober living." But man, what an amazing experience sober living was, right? And I went to this little house that's no longer with us called My House. And I love the women there because the women there, they taught me how to respect myself. They taught me how to, man, I didn't even know how to dress when I first got sober, right? Like I was like that girl that, I just wanted to dress up and go to a meeting, you know what I mean? And they taught me how to dress. They taught me how to make my bed every day. They taught me how to be accountable. I remember one time I lied on my chore chart, right? And I wrote down that I had done my chore and I had clearly not done my chore, but they didn't tell me I was a bad person or I was gonna be in trouble. It wasn't like I was being punished because I didn't do that chore. Instead, I just got spoken to with love and grace on why we do chores and why we hold each other accountable and why we wake up each day and why it's important to, if you didn't do your chore, not write your name down, but explain why. Just teaching me how to like live that life again and know that I wasn't gonna be in trouble anymore. I think that I was really scared when I got sober this time too. I was scared. I was terrified of relapsing again. I was terrified of letting people down. One of the things I hadn't shared yet is when about a year before I got sober, my mom was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And she didn't talk to me when I went to treatment. I remember telling my counselor, like, I want to call my mom. And my counselor was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Your mom knows that you're here. Your family has told her. And if she wanted to get in touch with you, she would. And then when I got out, I wanted to get in touch with her, but I didn't. I had to wait for that, right? And I had to give that some time. But by the time I was about 5 months sober when my mom reached out to me and we started to repair that relationship, she in that period of time, it was just really important for me to work on myself and to have those experiences. But by that time, the thought of letting her down again wasn't an option. It was no longer an option. I made a decision. I make a decision on a regular basis. I still have to make that decision to this day because I could go anywhere and get loaded. It's just that easy. Absolutely.
100%. And you bring up a really good point for the newcomers out there. When they get into treatment, they immediately want to start contacting all of their family that wants nothing to do with it. You know what I'm saying? Then it's like, well, 3 weeks ago, you were shooting dope with toilet water and robbing them blind. Like, I don't really think they need to hear from you right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's get a little bit better first before we contact them, you know? And
We're
it's all
constantly
about
looking
like,
for that instant gratification.
yeah,
Constantly,
just a
for
little
sure.
bit. You know,
Yeah,
you'd think we're addicts or something.
right. That part.
But yeah, and it's crazy, because I know a lot of that stuff, a lot of that stuff will be fixed in the amends process later on in the steps, but it doesn't always get fixed. Sometimes they don't go the way we want them to, necessarily, the amends process. And I know that this is something that you have a lot of experience with, because you did say your mom was diagnosed with a disease, a bad one. And I feel grief and loss and recovery is something we don't really talk about enough. Could you explain a little bit about your experience and how you were able to stay sober through that?
Sure, I'd love to. So, like I had said, my mom had come around 7 months. And over the next few months, I was able to first do what I said I was going to do. After she allowed me back in her life, when she would reach out and say, "Hey, can we go for coffee?" I made sure that I was there. "Hey, can you come with me here?" I made sure I was available. Then it was, "Hey, would you like to come over to the house?" And I made sure that I showed up on time. And this is doing this, you guys. Like, I lived in Phoenix, she lived in Levine. Buses didn't really come out, but like I made it work, right? Like I made sure that the rides were set up. I made sure that if I had to take a bus to a certain extent and then get a ride, or take an Uber, whatever that looked like, I made sure not only was I there, but I was on time and that I was present. Recovery gave me some abilities back, right? The ability to be accountable, accountability, reliability, and availability. And those are three very important things to me today. And it was important in early recovery that I did those things and I did what I said I was going to do because I hadn't in so long, right? Like my mom was used to me saying, "Hey mom, can I borrow your car?" And 3 days later I show back up with it. So anyways, at some point she had said that she was looking for somebody to come and live with her to help take care of her for like a discounted rent. And after looking for a while and she couldn't find anybody, she invited me to move back in with her and be that person for her. And man, what a blessing. I was able to move back in and we started to share life together. And I was able to take care of her for several years. I want to talk about this really quick though. Let's talk about grief, right? At 5 years sober, I was sponsoring everything that I'm doing today, minus a little bit, right? I was missing a part. But I was sponsoring, I was going to meetings, I was of service, of maximum service. I was, I'm working at all the things and stuff in life I'm doing, right? And I'm praying. I'm praying. But at this point in my life, I'm praying like, "Good morning, God. Thank you for good morning, God. Keep me sober. Have a great day. And good night, God. Thank you for keeping me sober." Right. And that's kind of where I'm at in life. And my mom becomes ill and ends up in the hospital and she's not really herself. And at that point, the doctor pulls me outside and he tells me to prepare for the end of life. And I was not ready. I was not spiritually fit. I was not I was not okay. And at 5 years sober, I found myself completely lost, completely broken, and thinking about drinking over 100 times a day for 10 days. It was the longest 10 days of my recovery. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was obsessing. I'm really shocked I didn't pick up. I don't know why I didn't pick up because everything in my brain and in the fear that consumed me told me to get loaded. And I was really focused on alcohol, which is crazy because I'm a total tweaker, you know what I mean? So, but I just could not stop thinking. I was just struck with grief and struck with fear. I was frozen in fear, and the only solution that I had at the moment was alcohol. But for some reason, I didn't pick up, right? And I started to realize that something hit me one day. It just hit me at like day 8-ish of that time. It hit me that I was going to love and serve God no matter what. And that no matter what meant if I lost my job, or if my mom died, or if my mom stayed alive, or if my husband left me, or if something happened to my kid. No matter what happens, I will love and serve God no matter what. And when I finally succumbed to that, right? When I gave it all, And I said, you know what, God, I will love and serve you no matter what, the no matter what. In fact, I beg you, let me. I finally realized where I was lacking, which was in my relationship with God and my belief and my reliance fully on God. So yeah, so that was at 5 years sober. And at 7 years sober, I lost that mama. You know what I mean? And she passed away. And I got to be present for it. And it was super beautiful. And I think that she passed away knowing that I was going to be okay. And when she passed away, I didn't think about using or drinking at all. I was spiritually fit. I was just okay. Now, grief. Grief is grief, man. I went through grief. I can't say that I didn't think about drinking, but I was absolutely still stunted. Grief is something that when it happens for me, everything in life around me was happening, but I was not. Life was happening on around me, but I was just there. And I went through a lot of anger after that. Thank God for good friends and graceful people in my life because I became kind of aggressive, um, and not that pleasant to always be around. And then at 7 years sober, and after a few months of this, I decided to seek outside help. And it was the first time in recovery that I sought outside help. And man, thank you, God. Thank you for placing good people in my life to say, hey, maybe this isn't something that a fourth and fifth is going to fix. Maybe this isn't something that a 10th and 11th is going to fix. Maybe this is something that you need to seek outside help for. And that's what I did. I started counseling and I started going through grief counseling and was able to come to some terms. And the grief still comes and goes, it's still very present. But I can at least speak about it today without completely breaking down in tears. I mean, I have some tears in my eyes right now because I miss her. I miss her terribly. But it was. Um, It was the most profound thing that had ever happened to me is losing my mom and walking through that sober because I never thought that I could. Not especially after I got to take care of her for 6 years. I got 6 long years of making a living amends to her. And not all my amends went that way. But just still, not at all. But that one went really well. But no, my amends were not so great.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm so happy you got to make a living amends. You did mention, and I think it's important to talk about because I know there's people. I know when we approach our amends, is we usually expect the worst, and then the more we make them, and it's not that way, then we kind of expect them all to go well, and like not all of them do. So, do you have any advice for someone that might be, or do you have any experience with someone that you tried to make an amends to and it didn't go so well?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, my first suggestion to a newcomer who's making amends is make sure that you go through steps 1 through 8 before making that amends. Okay. I tried to make an amends in early recovery, really early recovery. And I was reminded that there were 8 steps in front of 9. And I probably shouldn't do that again. It was to an old employer. I had alternative motives. I wanted a job. And so I tried to make this like amends. In fact, the amends I tried to make to her, she even said to me, next time you try to make an amends written straight out of the AA book, shove it up your ass. That's what she told me. Yeah, and she kicked me out of her store. And so, first, make sure that you're actually at step 9, and that you practice these things with your sponsor. Be prepared for the greatest, sure, but also be prepared for um, not the greatest. So I had that situation happen. I had another situation where I had called another boss because in my employment, I wasn't always honest person. And so I reached out to another person I had worked for and I owed them an amends. They didn't want to talk to me at that time and to call them 6 months later. So I put it in my calendar and exactly 6 months later, which happened to be my actual birthday, I called them back. And I said, hey, so you asked me to call you back in 6 months, and here I am. And I was just wondering if you'd be willing to speak to me. And she took a deep breath and she said, no, absolutely not. I wish you no ill will, but don't ever contact me again. And I went, okay. And it was painful and it hurt because, like, don't you know who I am? Don't you know I need to make these amends. I want to rid myself of these bad things and offer you anything I can do to make it right. Like, I'll do it. And she didn't want to hear it, And so, but what the big book tells me is that, if that ever comes up, let's say she reaches out to me tomorrow, man, here I am. I get to still do it. You know what I'm saying? And I have to be prepared at any time. But there were relationships that were just so ruined. I've made financial amends, big financial amends. There was a friend of mine that her and her family had loaned me a large amount of money. A large amount of money. And of course I didn't pay it back because I was in my disease. And so when I got sober, I reached out and I made $500 a month payments for several months to pay off this amends, hoping there was a part of me that hoped that she would be like, man, I'm so glad you're back. And, I loved you so much because we'd known each other for like, man, we've known each other for probably close to 35 years, something like that. And I was really hoping, but instead, as soon as that, we had very little contact during the financial part, I contacted her, started making payments. She would say thank you when the payments were over. She was just like, thanks and good luck to you. She didn't want anything to do with me. And again, okay, okay, God. And I have to believe that that's for a reason. I don't have to, I believe that's for a reason. God is doing something for me that I couldn't do for myself. And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know where the promises come from that other than today, the life I live today. I don't have to worry about making financial amends anymore. I don't. Every amends that I could possibly make with people that are still alive, that what I'm saying, that I've either made or attempted to make, but they all weren't like, "Oh, yeah, just do so great and keep up the hard work." No, some of them were like, "Don't contact me again." Okay, absolutely.
And you bring up a good point. Like a lot of people are like, just keep doing what you're doing, keep up the great work, stay sober. That's the hardest fucking one to do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much easier if you were just to be like, give me X amount of money and we're okay. I would almost rather that. That puts a lot of pressure on me in early recovery to
Yeah,
continue to stay sober. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Sometimes I would rather just have a set amount of money. Okay. Like, I know the parameters of that. Like, that's doable.
Mhm.
Give me something to do for you. I want to
Yeah,
make it right. But yeah, no, you're totally right, and I mean, we don't. It's crazy. For me in my recovery, and I know that like especially in the amends process, I do it because it's the right thing to do, and in my recovery, I can't afford not to do the right thing, because I did the wrong thing for so long, and like that got me absolutely nowhere. So I try to do the right thing wherever possible, and even if it doesn't work out in my favor, it was still the right thing to do, and that keeps me sober for another day at least.
absolutely. I mean, even today, for example, like I got short with somebody at work, and the second that I saw that I got short with them over the phone, the second that I saw them, I immediately made that amends like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I got short with you earlier today and that wasn't okay." And he kept saying, "No, no, it's okay. It's okay." And I just said, "No, it's really not." And I apologize for it. Righting those wrongs immediately, doing a thorough 10th step and 11th step, and it's a big deal to me because if I don't, it gets in my head and it'll fester. And sometimes it turns into resentment against myself. Sometimes it turns into resentment against others. Sometimes it festers into irritation or shortness. My husband and I have this saying, and it's just do better. Just do better. Just do better than you did yesterday. Just do better than you've done in the past. Just do better. Because to think that we're going to be perfect or always make the right decision again, and right decisions are a lot of times based off perceptions, anyways. You know, because where I think I might be making a right decision, I might offend somebody else. It's about perception. But if I offend that person in that process, I have a due diligence to myself and to that person to try to make it right because it's never my intention to harm others anymore. It's not I'm not afforded that. I don't get to do that anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I don't get to do that either. And speaking of the amends process, like there's a lot that comes up. One of my least favorite amends to make was the ones where I felt they really owed me one, but like, I was still making the amend. Like when my sponsor was like, yeah, you have to make an amends to this person. I'm like, didn't you hear the part where she cheated on me and like owes me money for rent? Like, and he's like, yeah, but what did you do to like make her? And I'm like, yeah, that is true. but still, like, it's hard to make an amends to somebody when you when you still have a little bit of resentment towards them. But the miracle of this thing is once you make that amends, that resentment kind of goes away. Because if you once you make the amends and if it was truly meant to mend that relationship, it drops the person's guard a little bit. It makes them think highly of you, I mean, in an ideal situation, but but yeah, I mean, I can attest to amazing things happening through the ninth step, and I mean, all the steps really, but the ninth is really where the promises come in, and I think
Mhm.
it's incredible. It's if there's an amends that you're fearful of making, that's probably the first one you should make, you know?
Probably. The other thing with amends is, that part that sometimes people will forget to ask, which is, did I leave anything out? Right? Have I missed something? I was making an amends one time with somebody and I said that. And their response was, yes, in fact, you did, and they started listing these situations off that I had no memory of, right? None. But to them, it was impactful and it was harmful, and they have remembered every detail to this day. So I had to stop listening to what the story was behind it and instead listen to the pain and the anguish and the anger and the hurtfulness behind what they were saying. And I just had to own it. Right. And I was like, man, it really sounds like I harmed you, that I lied to you and I cheated on you, and those things are not okay. And those are not the things that I want to be today. And so I had to make an amends based off of more like the feelings and emotions behind it, because I had no clue the stories that they were telling, but they checked out. Like, oh yeah, that sounds like something I would have totally done for sure. Yeah. So just being prepared for that too is, can be impactful.
And again, it's another situation where I'm sure making amends and, being accountable and being present and aware of when our character defects comes up, surely today helps with the relationship that you have today with your family, And I wanna ask how does the relationship with your family look today? I know you said you have a husband. Did you guys meet in recovery?
We did. We did. He's my favorite person. So yeah, I met him at a meeting. Um, and I had been through my steps. He's got a little bit more than a year longer. God willing, in fact, he will have 10 years on Wednesday. God willing. I think he'll make it a couple days. But we did. We met at a meeting, and, we took it slow. I had taken some relationship courses because, like I had said before, by the time I gotten sober, I was very lonely. I hadn't dated in a lot of years. I had previous experience with like dating somebody. In my addiction, I didn't want to be an addict. I really didn't want to be an addict. So I lived a very like secluded kind of addict life, especially the last 5 years, where I pretended like I wasn't an addict because as long as I had a job, a car, and custody of my kid, I was fine. Right. But I would always lose those things. Like and in the end, I didn't have any of those things. Right. But so because of that, I hadn't dated in a really long time. And so when I started dating him, I breaking up with him. And God kept saying, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Literally, God placed him I broke up with him and I blocked his number and I was like, I'm never going to see that guy again. Whatever, whatever. I won't go to that meeting anymore. And 2 days later, I'm standing in the middle of a hospital super far from my house with my mom. And there he is standing there. He had went to the hospital with somebody else. I had went to the hospital with my mom. And there he was standing in front of me. God just kept showing me like, absolutely not. This is the guy for you. And so we dated. We met in the rooms and we took it slow. We dated for about a year and then we moved in together, or he moved in with me here at the house. We dated for a couple more years after that. We got married and we've just celebrated 5 years of marriage in November. And he's my happy place. I've never had to see my husband drunk or high, and he's never had to see me drunk or high. And we have built a beautiful, beautiful life together. Between the two of us, we have 3 children. I have my daughter, and then I have 2 bonus boys. And they're all about a year apart. And beyond that, we just have this extended family too. Like he's got his family and we're a part of that. And I've got my family and we're part of that. But, we have such an extended family now. And between godparents and friendships, in and outside of the rooms. And he has his program and I have my program and we share a program together too. But I'm quick to go up north for an event without him because he has to work or because he simply doesn't want to go. He's got his men's group that he goes to on Thursday nights, and Thursday nights happen to be the nights that I take the hotlines, and it works out really well because the hotline is a private situation as well. So he leaves, I've got the hotlines, and I sit with my laptop and I watch my shows and wait for that phone to ring, and he's out doing his men's group. So it works out really well.
That is awesome. I actually go to a men's group on Thursdays too. It's probably the same
Pretty
one.
sure it is.
But yeah, no, and that's another good point. When we first come into recovery and like for the newcomer out there, I just want to say this. I don't think any of us had healthy relationships or even knew what that was. Because being an addict, a healthy relationship, relationships in general, we're not our strong suit. It takes a long time to start cultivating healthy relationships that are meaningful in this program, but they do happen, and that's another miracle because, like you said, for the longest time at the end of my addiction, I was isolating, and I guess the opposite of addiction is connection is what they say, right? Like, I
It
mean,
is.
you think it's recovery, but it's connection, really, because for so often we isolate and we cut ourselves off from the outside world, thinking we're doing them a favor, but we're really not. So, how long into recovery was it before you noticed the relationships, not just with like with your husband forming, but like how long did it take you to start forming meaningful relationships in your recovery? And was that a hard thing to do? Like, was it hard to go from living a life of pretty much isolation to getting a sponsor and like trusting that person completely?
Man, that's like there's so many different stages to that. So my sponsor is amazing, right? She was a gift. I did not choose her. She was chosen for me. And walking through the steps with somebody that I didn't know was super vulnerable. In fact, at one point I was in the middle of my fifth step and I went to go say something to her and I looked at her. I stopped dead in the middle of my sentence and I said, "You know what? I don't even know you. I don't even know nothing about you, and I'm about to tell you my entire life and just air all my dirty laundry to her." And she stopped me, and I don't know how she knew what I was going to say, but she just said it. She just said, "I blah, 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 blah." And I went, "Oh, okay, I'll continue." And I continued, and we had this sponsor sponsee relationship for probably about the first 3 years of my recovery, where like I complete sponsee sponsor relationship, like almost big book, textbook, big book, right? We would see each other at social events, but we would just kind of say hi and hug and go about our days. And then at about 3 years sober, we started to kind of form more of a friendship. And now we've traveled together and we've for sure broke bread, and she's one of my favorite people of all time. So her and her husband, and she has guided me. And that's, and in the 8 years of sobriety that I've had, I haven't found the need to get a new sponsor. And so she continues to guide me to this day. As far as relationships, man, those were hard for me. In fact, when I met my husband, I was praying at the time for a best friend. I was praying for a best friend. I was feeling really lonely. I had moved back out to Levine. I was living in Levine and I was trying to fellowship, out there by like where the spot is. And in that neighborhood is where my fellowship was. And I was feeling very lonely. And so my sponsor said, pray for a friend, pray for a best friend. I had no idea that God was going to give me a best friend in the form of a man because my first husband, he was a great guy. He still is a great guy, but he was not my best friend. And so when God gave me my husband in the form of a best friend, I was like, wow. But there became a time in our relationship where I still craved that female friendship. And I really wanted a best friend and I really wanted female friends. And so again, I started to pray for them. And, God hears me. God listens to me and he wants the best for me. And he wants, when my heart is pure and has great intentions, he wants those same things for me. And he gave me these amazing friends, and most of them were made in service. I get to serve along these amazing, strong women, like minded women. And I get to not just serve along with them, but I get to meet new ones at meetings and bring them along with me and show them, the ways of service. And so these relationships that I've created. That day that I talked about getting that, I love to tell this story. The day that I got that information from the doctor, and he said, "You need to go home and prepare for the end of life." I left the hospital that day and I went into my car and I was in my car downstairs and I was bawling, like hysterically bawling. And somebody from the program called, a girlfriend of mine called. And when she called, She said hello, and I said hello, and she instantly knew something was wrong, and she said, "What's wrong, honey?" And I just started to tell her, right? And I was bawling, and I'm telling her what's going on. And about that time, the other line rang, and it was my mom's doctor. And I said, "Hold on, it's my mom's doctor calling." And I put her on hold. And I got into this conversation with her doctor, and I was on the phone with her doctor for like 25 minutes. And I didn't even remember that my friend had been on the other line. And when I hung up with that doctor, when you hang up an iPhone, if there's somebody on the other line, it'll ring again. And I hung up the
Yeah.
phone and it rang again. And I picked up the phone and I said, "Oh my God, you're still there." And her response is, "Honey, where would I go?" And never in my life had I ever had somebody wait on hold for 25 minutes just to make sure I was okay. Those are the kinds of friendships I have today. Is friends that won't hang up and they don't give up and they wait for me to like go through whatever I need to go through and to be there for me. It was an impactful moment because I had never had a friendship like that before. The only person that ever waited on me was if I was going to get them dope. The only person that was going to wait on me was when I was bringing them money. Nobody was ever going to sit on hold on the other line to just make sure that I was okay and I was in an okay in a good, an okay spot before they hung up. It was a beautiful experience.
That is amazing, and, it's crazy. The relationships we form in this program as a direct result of, just being around people who truly want the best for us. At first, it's a little hard to believe. You're taken back a little by, like, does this person really want what's best? And the answer is yes. Like, as a stipulation of my recovery, I wanna see other people recover, I love seeing other people get this thing, and in life, normally, in positions of when I was, like, using or whatever, I was used to people just wanting the worst for me. Nobody out there was, like, rooting for you, and it's something you gotta get used to, When you first come into recovery, there are people that are rooting for you, and it's real, Especially for me, when I first came into the rooms, it was really weird to realize that, like, I was so messed up. I guess I had just, like, mislabeled emotions, because, like, all the, like, when I would see somebody doing good, I would get, like, jealous or, like, upset about that, when I was using. When I'm in recovery, I have, like, admiration towards them for that, and I wanna, like, do what they do and, like, learn from them, and they're willing to teach me. But when you're using and somebody does good, they don't really wanna share how or what, they're selfish with it. Here, it's a little bit different, and it takes a little getting used to at first, but yeah, it's like these people are genuine, you know?
I have genuine connection. I think that you hit on it earlier. Like, I had a lack of connection. I had no real connection until I got sober this time. I didn't even understand the concept of it. And that's with all aspects. That's with my family, my daughter, my mother, my brothers and sisters. And it took them a long time. It took my sister over a year before she would even attempt to like walk outside with me. She had zero trust for me, real connections. And now I actually serve on another committee, not an A committee. It's a women's retreat. And my sister has gotten involved because she's obviously Al-Anon, and she's gotten involved, and now we get to serve together and serve other women every year together. And it's such a beautiful thing. And that comes from connection. And I have real connection with real women that show up for me, and they do want the best for me, but they also show up for me when I'm not doing so well, like in grief. They kept reaching out. They took me to meetings. They came and sat with me because I sat in the house. I sat for about 6 months after my mom passed. Like I said, the world was going on around me, and I didn't quite know how to process it all. And so I sat a lot watching movies, and they would just come over. They were like, "Oh, we're watching a movie. That's what we're doing? Okay, that's what we're doing." And when I wasn't that graceful and I was a little short or downright kind of a jerk, they were graceful with that too. And they're like, "Okay, so you're still going through it." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going through it." And those are those real connections, those connections that I wanted my entire life. Because I think that when you're using, I know when I was using, I wanted them. I just didn't know how to get them. I didn't know how to do that. And it was because I was blocked from the sunlight of the spirit. I couldn't. My heart was blocked. My soul was blocked, it was stunting my growth, my spiritual growth. And today I have real connections with all sorts of people, not just in the program. I'm so blessed to be able to still have family and friends that I've had for many years reconnect with me, and I get to live this beautiful life and share it with them.
So, I hope I word this question right because I was thinking about it when you were talking, and I noticed a direct correlation in my life to the relationship that I have with God and the relationship that I have with other people. And I can learn so much about one another from the other, you know?
Sure.
So, how has like your relationship with God directly affected the relationships you have with people?
Man, it's everything. God is everything or he is nothing. I love and I trust you no matter what. I wish that I could touch people and share my relationship with God with them because it is so deep and it's not a surface level, right? It's continuously growing and forming and that all well, growing and sometimes even stunted depending on my ability and my desire and my decision to how much I'm going to work on that, right? Because I think that again, I'm not perfect. And so sometimes I don't know why. It's like I have this great relationship with God and then all of a sudden I don't talk to him as much, right? But it is everything that I got this program and I started working these steps and I really started to form a relationship with God of my understanding, right? The bottom of page 46 in the big book about Alcoholics Anonymous talks about you don't, I don't, and I don't word it word for word because I'm not that great, but it says basically that God does not seek much from you. As long as you seek him, even the most minute, you will feel his presence, right? And I was able to build off of that because I never thought I was good enough. I just didn't think that like, why would God do anything for me? Look at these horrible, horrific things I've done in my life, right? Because all the things that people think that junkies do, I've done them, right? All of them. Now I didn't go to prison because of them, so I never been to prison. I did a lot, I did a little tiny like misdemeanors and jail stints, but I should have went to prison. I should have had a DCS case. I should have, like all the should haves. I should have died. I should have. So I've done all the horrific things, right? So would God want me, And so that thought that all I had to do, and it starts with a mustard seed, just a little bit of hope, that mustard seed of hope, right? That I have in my God replaced in me tenfold. And so I just continue to work on that relationship over and over again. And because of that, people have seen a drastic change in me. Are you kidding me? I was, I don't like to say this about myself because people tell me I shouldn't, but I'm a jerk. Like I'm really a jerk. And it's only because I have God today that I'm able to be a light and a loving source and a reliable source, because leave it to my own device and I am not a very kind person. I'm selfish, I'm inconsiderate, all those things. And today my life is completely flipped around, right? Because I want to be opposite. What is the opposite of your character defect, right? Which is your asset. And I work on those assets. I could focus on those character defects all day long, but I want to work on those assets. And who gives me those assets but my higher power, right? Because my God is everything. And when I watch a newcomer come into these rooms and start that fear that they have of forming a relationship with their higher power, whatever that looks like, right? I just sometimes wish that I could just hug it into them. Like, please just try it. It works. It really works, because without God, I wouldn't have anything and not be the person I am today. And I think that God knows that because I give God all praise to that. Absolutely.
That is amazing. And yeah, I've learned so much on how to treat other people by the way that God has treated me, if that makes sense. Meeting
Yes.
people where they're at. If I see somebody that I can help that can't do something for themselves and I can, I'll help them. I hope one day to be judged not by, I'm nice to the people who don't even deserve it because God was great to me when I didn't deserve it at all. So it taught me patience and love and understanding, and that's a big deal. I hope one day to be judged by not if I was great to the people around me who deserved it, but if I was kind to those who like didn't. You know? That would be
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You know, I hope I get judged the same way. Absolutely.
well, I mean, I wanna thank you again for taking the time out of your day to do this, and, I just wanna say I'm sorry for your loss of your mom. I think it's incredible that you've been able to take that and been able to help other people who are going through the same thing, you know? I think it's incredible all the service work that you do, and I just wanna say again, thank you for taking the time out of your super busy day to do this, and yeah, I just hope you have a great rest of your day.
I want to thank you too. And thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you so much. And before we go real quick, is there anything that you've got coming up or any events or anything that you want to promote?
Well, CMA Rocks is having a Valentine's Day dance on February 7th at the spot. And we have really cool, we're going to have a really cool baked potato bar. We're going to be serving crazy coffee. We're going to have Tweaker dating game and the Tweaker newlywed game. This is actually one of my babies. I created this event about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and CMA Rocks is just, yeah, my home group is just taking it on and done all of that. And then if you're interested at ever interested in getting involved at like a level outside of the state, please reach out to me. I can help you get in touch with anybody at the GSC for CMA. And if you're interested in doing things like, doing hotline work or just being, at service at a different level, I would love to walk anybody through that and help them get involved. The GSC is going to be this year in San Diego, November 6th through the 10th, I believe, or 12th. And I said San Diego. I meant San Francisco. I don't know if I said that. Anyways, and it's going to be a great time. So yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much. And I know there's a lot of people out there that probably want to get involved and just don't know how. So would it be all right if we just put your contact information in the description of the video so that they can reach out to you directly?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Please do.
I do want to say sidebar. Last year, I worked behind the counter at the spot for the dating game and the Valentine's Day thing, and it was the fucking funniest, one of the most hilarious things that I'd ever seen in my entire life. And like, I promise you, if you don't think you're gonna have a good time, I promise you, you will.
It's a good time.
Like,
It's a good time, and
it's
it's
a
good
really,
food and good people, all around good
yeah.
night. And again, like if you're new to this program and you're not sure how to get there, give me a call. We'll get you there. And if you're like, man, I don't have the money, don't worry, show up. Nobody will ever get turned away.
Absolutely. And that was another thing I was going to say, yeah, if the only thing that's holding you back is like a financial obligation of not being able to pay to get in the door, trust me, somebody will help you out. Yeah, just come out and if you want to get involved and you want to participate, there's nothing that is going to hold you back from doing so.
Just
And
come
I
out.
encourage everyone out there to go to the Valentine's Day event. It's fucking hilarious and
It's
it's
awesome.
super fun. The food's really good. The coffee's way too strong and there's going to like 100 tweakers you're going to have a great time. And I just want to say thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.